So we just recently finished our winter retreat. Um, and each year we have a different topic and we have different practices that we're doing in the hall. Um, and each year I'm working with my mind off the cushion. I see that that's what is similar between all of the winter retreats. My meditations are distracted and sometimes I'm bored. There's restlessness, but what I find really interesting is what's happening off the cushion. I can really see my mind and how the afflictions arise, how they disturb the mind when I'm walking around in this container that's so conducive to looking at the mind, the container of having space to investigate what's happening and the noble silence that we keep. This retreat, I was wanting to look at specifically true origins of dukkha, really looking at the causes of suffering. And I recognized pretty early on that I can't look at just true origins. I also need to look at true dukkha because they go together. And I noticed how I typically engage with these, which is not what the Buddha recommends. So the Buddha recommends that we understand suffering, but instead of that, I react, as Venerable Sepul was teaching about this morning. I react with aversion, denial, distraction, anything except actually understanding what's happening. And instead of abandoning the causes of true dukkha, I tend to just reinforce them. I'm habituated to the afflictions and to acting out the afflictions, and so I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm just strengthening this habit of reacting with affliction. I've also had some very wrong views about these first two truths in my life. One of them is that I was thinking that to understand suffering, that means to experience it as suffering. And that is totally incorrect. I remember bike riding in Spokane on a beautiful day, thinking, I'm supposed to see this as dukkha? This doesn't feel like dukkha. You know, it's the dukkha of change. But I was thinking that I needed to somehow experiencing it as pain. So I was conflating, the dukkha of pain and the dukkha of change. You know, actually the dukkha of change is pleasure. Because if it wasn't pleasure, then I wouldn't be attached to things. You know, we wouldn't be bound in samsara if we all recognized the suffering of change as pain. The other thing I was thinking about was that we experience these experiences as suffering because we're not investigating, because I'm just experiencing it on face value. I'm not looking into what's really going on. And with these teachings on the Mahayana thought training or thought transformation, it's really starting to sink in a little bit more that the suffering really is coming from our thoughts, right? Whether we label something as a problem or not as a problem, that's a thought. And so this, very intense dukkha that I feel is as substantial as a thought. I also had the misunderstanding that I needed to abandon dukkha. So of course we do want to abandon dukkha, but the Buddha doesn't say dukkha is to be abandoned, right? He says dukkha is to be understood. I've been trying to abandon dukkha my whole life. For many, many lives, I've tried to abandon dukkha. But what I've done is I just try to get rid of the condition for the arising of dukkha, right? Get away from the person who's annoying me, get the thing I want. I'm just kind of tweaking, but I'm not changing the actual cause of dukkha. So this is very different from cessation is to be actualized, because that's complete cessation. What I was doing was abandoning one tiny bit of dukkha for 5 minutes, or for a day, or for a year. But still, it's this partial elimination, this unstable, unreliable cessation. And so actually, the Buddha is encouraging us to remove suffering through removing its causes. And so I was thinking, well, why is this so difficult to do? And it's because dukkha and the origins of dukkha, as also Venerable Seppel was describing this morning, are so intertwined, right? So it's the dukkha of pain is the condition for the arising of the origin of dukkha in the form of anger. And the dukkha of change is the condition for the arising of the origin of dukkha in the form of attachment, right? So it's this cycle of suffering, reacting to that suffering, and getting more suffering. And I also had this thought that all of the afflictions, but most particularly anger and attachment, perpetuate the hope in samsara. I am totally addicted to, keeping the hope alive that I can somehow, as Venerable Jodrön says, tweak samsara just a little bit, and then it's going to be satisfying. It's going to be truly what I'm looking for. And I was thinking that anger is really clinging to this thought, it should be satisfying. So there's the awareness that it's not, but there's the very strong clinging that it should be different. It should be satisfying. And attachment is saying, well, this is satisfying. This is really good. So that's just not seeing it at all. That's totally opposite to how things exist. And so when I think about all of these things and how I've related to these truths and what I've done and my misunderstandings, I'm thinking it's really looking at these in such a narrow way, right? Trying to flee what I dislike, trying to get what I like, when in reality, the whole thing is unsatisfactory. That's what I really don't get, that the whole of samsara, the pain, the pleasure, neutral feelings, it's all unsatisfactory. Why? Because it's all intertwined with suffering, right? It's all, it's just this nasty web of suffering, the causes of suffering, all mixed together, reinforcing one another. And so this, I was reminded of this toy that I had played with as a kid. I don't remember when exactly I played with it. But do people know about the Chinese finger trap? Yeah, most people. So this is not a Chinese finger trap, but it will serve that purpose. So with this toy, it's a bamboo tube that's woven together. And you put your fingers in the end of it. And when you try to pull them out, the bamboo tube tightens and you get stuck, right? So you're trying to get your fingers out. But the more you pull, the more you try to get out, the tighter it becomes. And so I was thinking, well, this is the samsara. This is the samsaric trap, right? We get in thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to really enjoy this, right? And then the dukkha of change turns into the dukkha of pain, and you think, oh, I want to get out of here. And you pull and you get stuck. So this is what I do. Trying to get... That's what I do all day long. Sometimes you might see it on my face. Sometimes you might see it in my behavior. I want out of this. This isn't working. Why is it like this? And so actually, what the Buddha is advising us to do is to first relax. I'm in samsara. My mind is afflicted. I don't see clearly. Whatever I perceive is distorted. And so the way I typically act is contradictory to the way things exist. So I'm just going to relax. And then I'm going to move towards the pain. I'm going to think about what's going on here. Why do I feel like this? What is dukkha? And understand it. So moving my fingers towards the center. And I do that through studying and reflecting and meditating. And then once there's space, once this bamboo tube has loosened, then I can see options. I can apply antidotes. And so then I can begin to release. I can abandon the causes by cultivating true paths and actualize true cessation. And I think this is something I really want to carry forward. First, just recognize what you're doing to yourself. I'm trapping myself in a finger trap of thoughts, of very distorted, very painful thoughts. So I need to stop. I need to relax. I'm doing this to myself, and then figure out how to get out. But it's not through attachment or anger. And so we can just keep practicing this. I'm going to really try to really recognize these in my own experience and continue to look at dukkha and really understand it and try as best as I can to abandon its causes. So let's do that.